Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and we've got a cool Kickstarter review for you today. We're going to be taking a look at the My Dungeon Kickstarter that's live, Underground Adventures. If you are a D&D player, if you like the idea of playing war games underground, if you like 3D printing stuff, or more importantly, if you like the idea of playing Dungeon Ball in a cave system, this Kickstarter could be interesting to you. So they contacted us, they sent us a few tiles to play around with as well. So we printed them, we painted them, and we're going to take a look at the Kickstarter. Okay, so the Kickstarter is called My Dungeon Underground Adventures 3D STL Tiles Terrain. Now, as it stands, this is just a Kickstarter for the STLs, although they do have a little flag there to say, hey, if you want them to take this to a physical future Kickstarter, they're going to look at that, doing that as well, which is pretty cool. Now, at the time of filming, because it's taken me a few days to get around to printing them and prepping them, they've got 6 days to go. So as this video comes out today, 6 days remaining. Saturday, March 18th is when this finishes. So you've got a whole week to see this video and to like it. We talked about this on the podcast, which would have come out yesterday, and the guys were pretty excited by it. I've got some printed versions to show off. And having actually printed the tiles, I am personally very excited about it. But yeah, they've smashed their goal already and they've still got a week to go, basically. So let's have a flick through and see what the Kickstarter is about. And I think the best place to start, they've got a list of great stretch goals, is with this picture here. And we're going to zoom in on it because it is just very cool. So this is a Kickstarter for RPG tiles, basically. 25mm square tiles. Now, we're Blood Ballers, we need our tiles to be 34mm. You can scale it up because it's 3D printed, which is wicked. So you've got the kind of D&D scale. You've got the older edition of Blood Bowl scale if you want it. But more importantly, if you want to play with real models of real stature and size, then actually you can scale it up to the 34mm scale, which is what I've done. And we'll look at the STLs on that in a minute. And it's a tile set system. Now, they've got a little clippy system that goes between, so you can put them together and take them apart together. Most of the tiles are 2x2, which makes it really easy to put together. And as we look through the Kickstarter, we'll kind of see that they've got cave walls. Oh, they've got these cool, like, 3D print LED elements to it as well, which is just incredibly fun. But this here, tell me you don't want to play Dungeon Ball. Tell me you don't... Brute Fun's working on a cave goblin squig team, right, at the moment. Tell me you don't want to make a pitch out of this stuff. Because I do, and if I didn't already have 2 dungeons on the go, that is exactly what I would be doing. And probably will at some point. So, anyway, as we go through, it's just so cool. It takes me back to like the early 2000s when I discovered the bigger world of wargaming, and you had RPG stuff and you had the cool sets, you had Mage Knight, and it's just got that really cool vibe. So here we go. This is how it works. That's a good point, actually. There's magnets underneath it. So if you've got a magnet system or a steel metal game sheet, you can just literally clip them in, which means if you've got something on your wall like a magnetic whiteboard, that's perfect. Like that's probably the best way to do this on a small scale, is get one of those magnetic whiteboards, chuck it down, and then you can literally just use the magnet system to chuck it on there. Or they've got the fixed lock system, which works with open lock as well, so you can combine it with other sets. But we will kind of want to look at what's in the set here, right? So, oh man, look at it. It's just so much fun. They've got low wall systems. And as we kind of grow through, can't beat a well-placed gift there to show how it goes. Low walls. Now, this is really important for us. Now, we've used a couple of different dungeon systems already, specifically for playing Dungeon Bowl. And you've got to get the walls right. Seems like a really stupid thing to say, but if you are incorporating elements and walls into squares that your players need to actually use, then you need to make sure there's enough space to do that. If you're going to provide walls external to the squares, they have to be non-invasive, and the way they've done this here is that it uses the space outside, and they have a low wall system, which means actually it looks great without necessarily getting in the way of some of the bigger models. You've got actually decent access with your hands, which is pretty useful. And this set has got different elements to allow you to have pillars and raised sections, which is just pretty cool. They've got stuff for water sections as well. And this is how the 2x2 grid works. Now, for us Dungeon Ball players, you need 2x2 space, 2x2 live space in everything. And I've printed off a few different tiles to kind of show that actually that can be achieved really nicely. I started basically brewing up a room with the big cave bits around the edge, and that would look really good for a dugout actually. See, inspiration is everywhere. Thanks to the 2x2 design of our tiles, you can easily combine them however you want. And this is the danger with this set, is it is so gribbly and interconnectable that you can just smash out loads of different varieties. And you can just use the flat tiles if you want to just run out a Dungeon Ball board really, really quickly, because the tiles are actually quite thin, they're really nice. I printed mine on resin, which means that naturally I hollowed them and supported them to minimize resin cost, because when you're printing tiles, if you just flat print with resin, it's going to be 1, very expensive, and 2, could lead to failures. But these are designed, I think, for plastic printers and therefore work beautifully. See the crystal tiles, this is where it's just really exciting. And you've got cliffs as well, which is cool, so you can add that element. They've done such a good job of prepping this with the different layouts. Look at that. Absolutely love that. And you've got some cool different styles. Right, the pledges, what are you paying and what are you getting? Base cave set, get 40 STLs. Core caves gets base sets plus all the add-on. Please do not select add-ons. That's 95 STLs. Landscapes as well. This is the other thing that if you are a Dungeon Ball player, may be interested in. If you're a wargamer, you will definitely be interested in. And that's that their previous Kickstarter is involved in this as well. They've got the cool little cave topper archway thing. I wondered what that was in the set. Oh, that's genius. I didn't use that. I should have used that. Right, basic cave sets. You've got a bunch of the flat tiles, and then you've got the cool wall sections. Now, we've got a couple of the wall and corner sections to look at in a second, so we can kind of get to grips with how they're structured. And then there's a bunch of special tiles there as well. You've got all the different bits and add-ons. Now, I think personally, and I will back this in a minute, you need the special add-ons, and going all in for all the add-on set is definitely the right way to do. You get the water floor bit, so I undoubtedly at some point will get bored and want to make a cave pitch, probably for the next series of the Bonehead Championship. We're going to have goblins in it. Goblins need and it works for Underworld as well, right? An underground pitch. This is a really cool way of doing it, and you kind of want those water sections to be able to split it up. You want the bridges just look great, the cliffs look great, the stalagmites make really good backing. It's just a load of cool stuff. And then they've got the landscape set as well, which is a bunch of essentially wargame terrain. I know this is an RPG focused Kickstarter, but this is wargame terrain. If you play 40k, Age of Sigmar, War Master, because it's STLs and you can scale it down. My buddy Rick is going to be very excited about this. You got roads, trees, cliffs. Nice. All right. If you are a wargamer, then it's pretty good. There is a Super Master set, core set, plus landscapes, plus all the add-ons. So €60, you get all the cave stuff, all the expanded cave stuff, all the expanded terrain stuff as well. Nice. And they've crushed their stretch goals as well. You've got planks, you've got a stone hand, you've got chests. That might be useful for Dungeon Ball, actually, as long as there's magnets not underneath. You've got natural pools, the cool corner sections. That's pretty useful. And you've got the cool doors there as well. So the water floor is the one I'm really quite excited about. You've got a stepped floor, which is going to be really good, but the water floors I really feel like adds a lot to the pitch. It can represent low-level water, right? And you can just glue some sand on there to represent bits coming through, but it adds a bit of depth. Anyway, I'm talking about the STLs and just the flipping pictures. From a backing point of view, £16 is going to get you all the cave stuff. Landscapes is £27. Core set and add-ons 95 STLs for £31. That's what I will probably back, although £54 for the Super Master set with all the like landscape terrain could be pretty useful as well, or 177 for the commercial pledge. Probably don't need that one. So there's a good bunch of different levels. If you just want the core set for caving, 16 quid. If you want core set and all the fancy bits, 27 quid. And if you want all the terrain as well, yeah, all right, there's a lot of stuff here. And I think there's a level for everybody. Now, we've got our hands on a few of the STLs. Let's have a quick look at the STLs before we look at my prints. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the STLs. We've got a few to look at, and the beginning place has to be the flat tiles, right? So this is the first flat tile section. We've seen it painted, we've seen it in the pictures, and we've seen it as an example. And you've got this clip system here. that you've got on the way round. Now, these are designed, I believe, to print on plastic and on resin. And as you print this, because they've got those supports in there, it will probably be fine. I didn't when I printed mine. I hollowed them, flipped them, punched holes in them, supported them to get more on a plate because, well, you guys know me. One print with lots of stuff is kind of my style. So you can flip it under, you can see the magnet access, you can see they've got the clip access here on all four to kind of merge them together, and that's perfect. The one thing I do have to note about this, especially for Blood Bowl players, is that it is a 25mm scale, right? So the... oh, I've got the... it's poking off the side of the page, it'll be fine. So the 4x4 grid is 50mm square. Now, we're Blood Bowlers, so we need that to be 68mm square, so we have to scale it up. And it's really important to look at the scale. So these are just 4 squares. 4 squares come in 135.78% scale. As we look at some of the other tiles, we'll kind of come and see that that they don't all match. In fact, let's just grab straight section A. So this is not a 2x2 area. This is a 2x1 area with a cool attached wall there. And this is how most of this is structured. And in fact, if we grab the corner as well, because this is how it kind of plays together. Let's put that there, let's put that there. This is dangerous using Chitu box to kind of start putting together your dungeon. You can see that they're supposed to go corner to corner. So that's 1 square, 2 square, 3 square as it goes across. Now, because this one you would expect again to be 50x50, it's not 50x50 because this is not entirely the same size. You need to make sure that if you're scaling it up for Blood Bowl, Control A, it needs to go to that 135.78% scale. And that's how I managed to make sure that all my tiles were the same scale up. Anyway, that's the boring bit. The exciting bit is look at the cave tiles that we've got. And these are just 2 of the example tiles they've shared with us. The core set's got 40, the expanded set's got 95 different tiles. And if you grew up playing Heroescape or just any kind of dungeon stuff, then just the potential of having this at your fingertips is brilliant. When it comes to printing, if you're plastic, then go ahead. You've got the clip space, you've got the magnet space there. Let's just run a quick slice on this. So this is my S2, which I think is 040, maybe 030mm scale. 4-hour print on that one, and £4. So £2 a tile is actually fine. When you start planning out a dungeon, you're going to use a lot of tiles. So what I did with mine is the classic flip it. Now, I didn't do it 45. I think I went all the way up to 75. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wrong way. Put the heavy side down. And printed them like this. And because of the way I always do this, I went up 3mm to there. And then I pressed this magical button here, which hollows them out. The reason I hollow stuff when it comes to resin is because it's going to use a lot less resin. Now, we'll need to support it, so there'll need to be supports. And for terrain, you've got... I'm happy using the auto supports when it comes to printing out terrain. When it comes to printing out models, you kind of want to do it yourself or use the auto supports and then kind of flex them. The way I did this is I haven't punched the holes in them. That'll be fine. We'll just chuck a bunch of light supports on there because we're just going to try and see how much it would cost to print. But you need to punch holes in there to make sure the resin drains. Never print a hollowed out resin model without putting exit holes, because it just becomes a bomb. Over time, it's going to seep liquid resin, which is a chemical. That seems like an optimistic way of doing the supports there, Chitu box. But hey, that's why you don't always rely entirely on the pre-supports. There we go. And we want to just cut some holes where we can find space. The different depths will be fine. You definitely want to do this before you pre-support. So I've done this the wrong way round, and I'm not doing a great job. I did a better job when I printed my own models, and we'll show those off in a second. But as you click through to get some drainage holes in there, that gives you the idea. So instead of just flat printing, which I think we said was going to be £4, we'll click the slice button, escape slice, and it's going to take longer, but you can fit more on. And should use less resin here because that's how I did it for my tiles. We'll have a look at a couple of the different STLs as well. There you go, £1.80 to do this. It's going to take 6 hours to print, so it's going to take longer to print, but you'll be able to fit more on a tray. You hollowed it out, and it's costing half the price. So if you are going to be using a resin printer to print these tiles out, and remember we've double scaled them as well, that is the way I recommend doing it. I don't recommend rushing it. I recommend punching holes in the side here, like little holes, just to absolutely maximize your drainage. But that is how I printed and prepped mine. And they've got a multi-level cool bit there. You've got an end here, you've got arch door, you've got the adapters, and you've got pillars. So there's a lot of cool STL elements that are coming with this. Now, Dungeon Bolt tends to work on a 2x2 structure, so some of it isn't going to be quite right, isn't going to be perfect for it. So this end bit here, it will be fine to slap on to a 2x2 section to close it off, but you won't have any playing space in it. The wall section's good there, so you use that to... How tall is this? It is 44.78 tall. So we will zip this up into space, and you use this wall to fill in the space underneath here. So is there a join? There is a join. Look at that. So the join here, you put your little clip in. This bad boy here comes down to about there, and it clips straight in to one of those two levels. That's genius. That's really clever. So multi-level dungeon ball boards, if you're going to be doing that, that's pretty cool. And you've got these extra pillars to support your models as well, which I do really like. Does it have a magnet hole on the top? No, that would have been cool, but that's absolutely fine. You've got this cool little dungeon room as well. There's a lot of cool stuff you can print out. And while Dungeon Bowl, technically, all the tiles you've got are 2x2, there's no reason why you can't print off something that has just a one-man corridor, which I think is pretty cool and is something we've not considered, actually. We always kind of assume that to play decent Dungeon Bowl, you have to have a 2x2 corridor. But actually, I don't think that's necessarily the case. This was my terrain test, so, we looked at this. This is going to be like a 5-6 hour print, and I'm moving it around. In fact, it was a 4-hour 28 print, and it cost me £4. I printed out 2 flats that I punched holes in and supported like this. I went with 2 flat walls and a corner wall there as well, and I was able to print all that out within 5 hours at £4. Now, for a coverage of an entire dungeon, no matter what you're using, whether it's plastic, it's going to take a long time. If you're using resin and doing it this way, it's going to take a lot of money. But man, I remember the days where back in a Kickstarter of dungeon tiles cost you £200. They would ship it on a crate and it would just be a ton of stuff. Now we get the flexibility to choose what we actually want to print and really just get it right. Anyway, I printed some, I primed some, I painted some grey. Let's have a look. Okay, so these are my tiles. I printed them, I let them rest. Now this is really important. If you're using resin printed dungeon tiles or terrain that's got hollowed out bits and drainage holes, best way to do it is to take it off your printer, and my way of doing it, I wrap it in tinfoil and chuck it in a cupboard. Obviously a safe cupboard to use, but what that does is just allows some of the loose resin to run its way through. I'll leave it in there probably, I don't know, 6 hours until my patience runs out, until I'm like, no, I want to do that now. Then I'll go chuck them in dirty IPA, rinse it out a couple of times just to try and get all that out. Now, it's really important that when you set this, you try and shine a UV light onto the inside where you have hollowed, and that is what I did. So you can see we got some bits and bobs here, and you can see all the holes. Now this is underneath, so underneath really doesn't matter. I grabbed a can of black auto primer, sprayed the whole thing, then chucked a white zenithal on the top of it. What I didn't do was let it dry properly, as you can see. So as I move this around, it's going to be sticky because I didn't let the paint dry, because I was excited. So this is one of the flat tiles. You've got 4x4 space here. You can see the paint's peeling off a bit where I haven't let it dry. Let your paints dry. Let your models dry. Don't be me. It's great. It's not too thick, and if we grab, well, we've got some good models kicking around. Let's grab one of the new Punga Pirate Orcs. I've scaled this up to 34mm, and you can see the flat tile does a great job. You've got flat tile, and then what you do is you add another flat tile to it, and then you've got 2 flat tiles where you've got all the coverage there. Now, if you're playing Dungeon Bowl, that is quite obvious. You kind of got the grid structure. They've actually done a really good job with the sculpts of making sure that it looks cohesive without actually having the sectioned off areas too obvious. So the flat pieces came out really nice. I'm a big fan of them. Actually, low print cost, and the details perfect. And the other advantage of printing on a resin printer at kind of like a angle is you don't get layer lines. If you print it flat, which is what I've been doing for one of the dungeons for the next Dungeon Bowl series, you will get ring lines. It doesn't matter too much when it's terrain, but it does look better without. And I printed 2 corners and a flat edge. So let's take a corner here. Now, one thing I didn't do is take off all the supports properly. So there's a support there that needs to be gone. There's a support there that needs to be gone. Probably should tidy that up. But again, like I said, grabbed a can of black primer, primed the thing, chucked some white over the top just to pick out the detail, and with that, even with that minimal effort, this is starting to look really, really, really good. And again, you can see the holes in the bottom where I've drained it. Probably not going to be the cleanest job. You know, you could have done a better job, Ben. But I didn't care. I was just really excited to get these starting to brew up together. Now, this is a corner piece, so when it comes to Dungeon Bowl, you're kind of going to want to do something along the lines of that. And then you've got the flat wall here as well. I genuinely just started printing stuff that I was like, right, what would I want to use for Dungeon Bowl? And you've got a cool flat wall there too. So this is where we start bringing on a model to kind of give you an idea of the space that you'll have to kind of work around it. And if you've played in a Dungeon Bowl, if you've played in a cool dungeon that someone's brewed up, printed, you've kit bashed it yourself, whatever, you'll know that you'll need space for your models to work around. And actually, I'm really impressed with the wall edges here. Even when you get some of the larger models, like these orcs, they're not tiny, right? They're not tiny. They're on a 32mm base. You've got the space to maneuver around. And if we take a bigger model like Brute Fun's Fattest Rat, it's got that place. Now, when you get to the edges, if you are going to have to orientate your models in a sensible way, so if you point them at the wall with their hand, it's not going to work, but there is enough space in there. And I think the best way to kind of demonstrate this, okay, the advantage of having sticky paint is the model's going to stick there. You've got this little space behind and to the side of the model there, where you've got a little bit of flexibility with your orientation. So you do have that bit that bit of space to kind of operate and to play the game. What's the biggest model I've got on my desk at the moment? It's probably Glottal Stop. And this, I think, is a really important test because Glottal Stop is just a massive, massive piece. And you're always going to have difficulty when using large models in a dungeon. And the way they've done it with the kind of small height walls. Oh man, I love this. I cannot wait to start filming Dungeon Bowl content again soon. 40mm base, 40mm base. Even in the corner, you will be able to find a kind of way to fit him on there. And it's never easy in a dungeon, but it's not going to get in the way of your gameplay. It's not going to get in the way of you telling your story. And no matter which kind of angle you film at or you play at, it is going to look really, really, really cool. And even now, you know, we've got this small selection of tiles from one print. You can kind of start to see how building a room for something like Dungeon Bowl is going to come together. So by putting those pieces together, you get this cool little backlog here of 4 squares. Chuck him there. Chuck this 4-piece there. And when it comes to building rooms like this for Dungeon Bowl, that can be how it stands. With flexibility, you'll need to make sure that they line up. So actually what we need is another corner wall here and a corner wall here. And you can kind of start building out what your dungeon is going to look like with a very small amount of effort. And the thing I really like about it is it doesn't really matter how it goes together. You can chop and change and it is just going to look really, really, really good. I'm really sold. I'm really sold. This is a lot of fun. Whenever you're printing resin, it is challenging. Whenever you're printing terrain, it is challenging. Whenever you're printing a dungeon, it is a big modeling challenge. But every one of these pieces is just kind of ready for you. So all you kind of need to do is slap it on the plate, choose how you want to print it. If you want to save money and do the way I did, you can do that. Well, we did 2 tiles together and it took very little time. I don't know. I don't know what else to say when it comes to prepping the tiles, because actually it didn't take a lot of effort. And even with this lazy boy paint job, you can start to already see how cool, I actually like this sticky paint there, how cool it starts to look when you kind of start using it. And that just makes me really excited to play games on this terrain. Okay, there you have it. My Dungeon Terrain Tile STL Kickstarter. And yeah, I think I already called it out as we were looking at the 3D prints. I did not put much effort into prepping them. I just wanted, normally for a print to pitch video, I'd chuck on some white, chuck on some contrast. I thought actually black with some white Zenithal may be a quicker way to spray it up and just to get the pieces going. And with that genuine minimal effort of prepping, and it's already starting to look great. Now, I called it out, printing a dungeon is never going to be cheap. Whether you're using plastic or whether you're using resin, it is an investment in time and effort. But what I will say about these tiles, they're ready to go. And because of the way they've kind of structured them, where they're kind of like a 2x2 set, it is going to make it so much easier to prep and play. And that, for me, is really exciting, because some of the other dungeon sets we've looked at, there's individual pieces, you've got to glue them together, you've got to put it together, and it's really cool, but it makes the flexibility a little bit more limited. This set, with all of the cool stuff they've got, all of the water bits and things, you can put as much effort into planning out your perfect dungeon, planning out your perfect pitch, which I guarantee I'm going to end up doing, because I really want a little dungeon or a little underworld pitch now. Maybe I'll just do a 7s pitch. Or you can just print off a bunch of tiles and clip them together and use them as you want, or use the magnet holes in the bottom to just slam them on a wall thingy, whiteboard, a magnetic whiteboard, something like that. So actually, if you're in the market for some dungeon tiles, this is going to be really cool, and they're going to come in handy. If you want to brew up an entire dungeon, this is a pretty good way of doing it as well. I like the detail, it's not too much, it's going to pop with very little effort when it comes to painting it, either using contrast or dry brushing. I like that too, and they've got a bunch of cool extras. So I think I'm going to have to wrap up this video right now and go and back it, because I feel like a cave goblin pitch for the Squig team might need to happen. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think, and a big thank you to My Dungeon for sending us some tiles to print and play with. I absolutely love it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy printing. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.